You might think being king is the best job in the world, but in France, it often came with a target on your back. From backstabbing nobles to revolutionary mobs, the history of the French monarchy is filled with betrayal and bloodshed. Today, we're diving into the dark side of the crown, uncovering the stories of every French monarch who was murdered. We're talking real, intentional killings, no accidents, no peaceful deaths in a warm bed. This is a journey through over 1,000 years of royal assassinations. Let's start way back with the Merovingian dynasty, France's first royal family, often called the long-haired kings. Their reign was notoriously brutal, and family feuds were a bloody sport. Our first victim is Sigebert I. He ruled from 561 until 575, a time of intense civil war between the Frankish kingdoms. His main rival was his own brother, Chilperic, but the real mastermind behind his downfall was Chilperic's wife, the infamous Queen Fredegund. As Sigebert was on the verge of total victory, Fredegund sent two assassins. They approached him, pretending to have a petition, but instead, they stabbed him with poisoned daggers, known as scramasaxes. His own guards were so shocked, they accidentally killed each other in the chaos. Sigebert's death plunged the kingdom back into turmoil, all thanks to a rival queen's ruthless ambition. Just a few years later, we have Childeric II. He was king of all the Franks from 673, but his reign was cut short in 675. Childeric had a nasty habit of humiliating his nobles. One nobleman, Bodilo, had apparently criticized the king. As punishment, Childeric had him publicly tied to a post and flogged, an act considered deeply dishonorable for a Frankish noble. Bodilo, burning with rage and shame, wasn't going to let that slide. He gathered a group of disgruntled nobles and waited for the perfect moment. While the king was out hunting in the forest of Loans, Bodilo and his co-conspirators ambushed him. They didn't just kill Childeric, they also murdered his pregnant wife, Bilichild, and their young son, Dagobert. It was a brutal act of revenge that showed just how dangerous it was for a Merovingian king to alienate his powerful subjects. Next on our list is Dagobert II. His story is a classic tale of political power struggles. After his father was assassinated, the young Dagobert was exiled to Ireland to live in a monastery. He was supposed to be out of the picture forever. But years later, he was recalled to Austrasia to reclaim his throne in 676. His return, however, didn't sit well with everyone, especially the powerful mayor of the palace, Ebroin. Ebroin saw Dagobert as a threat to his own control. In 679, a plot was hatched. Like Childeric, Dagobert was ambushed during a hunt. He was struck down, allegedly by his own godson. His murder was a clear message. In the Merovingian court, the real power often lay not with the king, but with the ruthless figures lurking in the shadows. The Merovingian body count keeps rising. Let's talk about two young brothers, Theudebert II and Theuderic II. They were the grandsons of the notorious Queen Brunhilde. Initially, they teamed up to defeat their cousin, but it wasn't long before they turned on each other. In 612, Theuderic defeated Theudebert in a decisive battle. He had his brother captured, his royal hair shorn, and then had him executed. It was a cold-blooded political murder, but Theuderic didn't get to enjoy his victory for long. Just 1 year later, in 613, he died suddenly of dysentery. However, the chronicles of the time strongly suggest he was poisoned. Why? Because his death conveniently cleared the way for his rival, Clothar II, to seize power. And that brings us to Sigebert II, Theuderic's illegitimate son. When his father died in 613, the 10-year-old boy was declared king, with his great-grandmother Brunhilde acting as his regent. But the nobles, who hated the powerful and aging queen, secretly conspired with Clothar II. Clothar's army marched in, and Brunhilde and the young Sigebert were betrayed and handed over. Clothar, wanting to eliminate all rivals, showed no mercy. He had the boy king Sigebert executed on the spot. As for Brunhilde, she suffered one of the most gruesome fates in royal history, being tortured for 3 days before being tied to the back of a wild horse. With their deaths, Clothar II unified the Frankish kingdoms, but he did it by wading through the blood of his own relatives. Fast forward a few centuries, and we arrive at the Capetian dynasty. Things were a bit more stable, but not entirely safe. Take Louis V, nicknamed Louis the Do-Nothing. His reign was incredibly short, lasting just over a year from 986 to 987. Officially, he died in a hunting accident after falling from his horse. Case closed, right? Not so fast. Rumors flew immediately that his accident was no accident at all. Many chroniclers, and even some modern historians, believe he was poisoned, possibly by his own wife or even his mother, who were allegedly allied with his rival, Hugh Capet. Louis's death was incredibly convenient for Hugh, who was elected king just after Louis died, thus ending the Carolingian line and starting the Capetian dynasty. Well, we'll never know for sure. Louis V is a classic case of suspected murder that changed the course of French history. Now we leap to the Valois dynasty, a period marked by the brutal French wars of religion. And at the center of it all was Henry III. His reign, from 1574 to 1589, was a political tightrope walk between radical Catholics and Protestants. Henry tried to find a middle ground, which ended up making him enemies on both sides. In 1588, he made a bold move by ordering the assassination of his arch-rival, the ultra-Catholic Duke of Guise. This act enraged the Catholic League. A year later, a fanatical Dominican friar named Jacques Clement, believing he was on a mission from God, gained access to the king's private chambers under the pretense of delivering an important message. As Henry leaned in to read it, Clement pulled out a dagger and plunged it into the king's abdomen. Henry III died from his wounds the next day, making him the first French king to be successfully assassinated in centuries. He was a Protestant who famously converted to Catholicism to unite the kingdom, supposedly saying Paris is well worth a mass, but his past and his policies of religious tolerance didn't sit well with Catholic extremists. He survived more than a dozen assassination attempts during his reign. But his luck ran out on May 14, 1610, as his carriage was stuck in traffic on a narrow Paris street. A Catholic fanatic named Francois Vaillac jumped onto the coach. He stabbed the king twice, with the second blow severing an artery. Henry IV died almost instantly. Vaillac believed he was saving France from a heretic king, but his act plunged the nation into mourning for a monarch who had finally brought peace and prosperity. And now, we come to the name everyone knows, Louis XVI. He wasn't stabbed in the dark or poisoned at a feast. His murder was a public spectacle, a defining moment of the French Revolution. His attempts at reform failed, and his flight to Varennes sealed his fate as a traitor in the eyes of the revolutionaries. The monarchy was abolished in 1792, and the former king, now known as Citizen Louis Capet, was put on trial for high treason. The verdict was a foregone conclusion. On January 21, 1793, Louis XVI was taken to the Place de la Révolution, now the Place de la Concorde, and executed by guillotine. It was a direct, political killing, a symbolic act that declared the absolute end of the old regime and the birth of a new and terrifying republic. But the tragedy of his family didn't end there. His young son, Louis XVII, is our final and perhaps most heartbreaking case. After his father's execution, the 8-year-old boy was recognized as king by royalists, but in reality, he was a prisoner of the revolution. He was separated from his mother, Marie Antoinette, and placed under the care of a cobbler named Antoine Simon, who was instructed to re-educate him as a good citizen. This re-education was, in reality, horrific abuse. The boy was isolated, beaten, forced to drink alcohol, and neglected. After Simon left, he was locked in a dark cell for months, living in his own filth. By the time he was finally checked on, he was suffering from severe malnutrition and tuberculosis. He died in his prison cell in 1795, at the age of 10. While he wasn't stabbed or guillotined, his death from systematic abuse and neglect is widely considered a political murder is slow, cruel execution of a child who was a symbol of the monarchy they sought to destroy. From the forests of the Merovingians to the blood-soaked streets of revolutionary Paris, the throne of France was never a guarantee of safety. These stories of murdered kings remind us that behind the magnificent portraits and grand palaces, the history of royalty is often a brutal story of power, betrayal, and survival. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey through France's dark royal history fascinating, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next video. See you next time.